Well, it's the latest development in the years-long legal battle for Johnson & Johnson over the safety of its talc baby powder products. A St. Louis jury yesterday awarded $4.1 billion in punitive damages and $550 million in compensatory damages to 22 women and their families who claimed that asbestos in the product had caused their ovarian cancer. Now, it's the latest in the more than 9,000 lawsuits the company's facing over the product, one of its most iconic brands. J&J sells baby powder with talc and also with cornstarch. And while natural talc can contain asbestos, all talcum products used in homes in the U.S. have been asbestos-free since the 1970s, according to the American Cancer Society. Now, J&J disputes the claims, saying the science shows its products are safe. And the American Cancer Society says the data on talc powder and cancer are mixed, and if there is an increased risk, it's likely to be very small. Now, J&J successfully appealed a number of talc verdicts, including a $417 million verdict in Los Angeles last year, and that was the largest award until, of course, this week. Now, joining us now from an exclusive interview, Johnson & Johnson's lead attorney, Bart Williams. Bart, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So this is just an astounding, eye-popping number, $4.7 billion in this award in St. Louis. What do you make of this and the 9,000 lawsuits that are really piling up here?
Well, I think what's happening is that the courts haven't caught up to the science. And this isn't the first time that that's happened in the history of American the legal system with product liability matters. It happened with silicone breast implants, where for a number of years in the 80s and the early 90s, there were a number of cases that went the plaintiff way at first. Then there were scientific studies that had been around all through that period of time that ultimately were followed. There was a reversal in terms of how the trial started going at that point. And then basically what started with a bang ended with a whimper. In the meantime, though, the plaintiff's lawyers made a lot of money, and the system ultimately worked, and we think the same thing will happen here.
When you're talking about the studies that were done at around that time, are you talking about the FDA study, 2009 to 2010, which they took samples of various powders, not just Johnson & Johnson, and found that there was no asbestos present.
Right.
How about prior to that, though?
Well, the FDA has been testing talcum powder, not just Johnson & Johnson's baby powder, but talcum powder for years and years. The most recent one where they took off-the-shelf, lots of off-the-shelf powder, was the one you mentioned in 2009. But they've been testing for many years. There's so many organizations, the National Cancer Institute, the FDA, OSHA, that have been testing talcum powder and doing studies on the epidemiology and the hard science of talcum powder for years and years.
The talc itself, if it's not contaminated, there's nothing to indicate that the molecular structure of talc is in any way carcinogenic.
That's right.
It's an asbestos contamination that is at issue.
Well, it's interesting. Over the course of time, the plaintiff's lawyers have shifted their theory.
Yeah, because I didn't think that was 20 years ago what they were talking about. I thought it was that the molecular structure of talc itself was somehow thought to be.
There are multiple cases here which each allege different things.
That's right. Sure, it's changed.
Why did you? I mean, I've been using. It's not easy to find talc baby powder, Johnson & Johnson. The cornstarch is great. You got aloe, corn. You got all the other ones. And that's what I've been using. Why did you introduce cornstarch in the first place? Was it in response to some concerns about talc, or?
Well, different people like different products. Cornstarch has more absorptive capability.
See, there you go. Yeah,
that's why some people like it. But talcum powder is a little bit smoother to the skin.
Yes.
And so that really is just a matter of preference, and that's why it was originally rolled out.
Okay.
Well, I understand that in some of the cases where you've got the verdicts appealed, it's been on a jurisdictional basis that these cases really shouldn't have been brought in the places where they were argued. If it's not overturned on the science, how does Johnson & Johnson as a company reassure its customers that these products are safe?
Well, first of all, Maggie, you should note that they've been overturned not just on jurisdictional grounds, but also on the merits. So, for example, a case in California, that's one of the cases that I tried, was one that resulted in a plaintiff verdict, but that case was reversed by the trial judge, saying that the science simply did not support it. Similarly, there was a large case in the state of New Jersey where the court threw out the science before it even was presented to a jury. So it isn't the case that it's only jurisdictional grounds that have had the cases thrown out. There are, in fact, the only two cases that have been through the appeal process in St. Louis, where the biggest verdicts have come in, and where this most recent verdict came in. Those two have been reversed. And there's a third that's upcoming. We expect that to be reversed as well.
We know that J&J is relaunching its baby products whole line right now, and it's getting rid of a lot of ingredients, or has over the years, parabens, phthalates, dyes, listing the fragrances in these products. And those things aren't things where we've seen a lot of lawsuits. They've just gotten rid of them because of consumer preference. Why not just get rid of the talc product and just sell the cornstarch?
Well, I think there's a policy question here. Johnson & Johnson doesn't believe in putting warnings on a product, a cancer warning on a product that doesn't cause cancer. Johnson & Johnson doesn't believe that it should be intimidated into removing a product that's been out for over 100 years, that has diapered hundreds of millions of babies around the world, simply because plaintiffs' lawyers have decided to put a target on the back of Johnson & Johnson. We believe in the product. The product works. The product is beloved. The best scientists in America have reviewed it again and again. And the remarkable thing is that the only response that the plaintiffs' lawyers have to all the agencies that I just mentioned that have concluded that the science does not support the case is to claim that it's all rigged. They're all in a conspiracy. And it's sad, but there are some folks, some juries that will buy into such an argument, even in the absence of evidence.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.